There are many places where one can begin to contextualize this discussion, this dialogue on border management. I thought I'll start off with a bit of the headline pictures that are not necessarily the good headline pictures, but it is a reality globally. So we know, for example, globally, that one of the challenges that we face in border management is this issue of trafficking. And you can see the statistics there. Globally, we know that anywhere between 55 and 60% of all trafficking victims globally are actually women and girls. And together, they account for 75%. We also know that when it comes to the movement of goods and maritime containers, we know that there are 500,000 containers that move around the world. But what we also know is that only 2% are physically inspected. We know that there are a number of what I'm calling drivers that affect border management just on this continent. So for example, if we look at human migration flows, we know, for example, that the Eastern Corridor is a major corridor where we see the movement of people moving down towards the south and eventually coming to our country. The infrastructure corridors, the roads, the railway lines, those are in themselves also major corridors for the movement of people and goods. These corridors also represent the good things, the good flows, but unfortunately they also represent some of the flows of crime. The second last map there shows some of the disease hotspots, and again it is something as countries and as a continent that we worry about, because we're trying to mitigate the negative consequences of the movement of diseases and health-related risks. The second last map there shows some of the disease hotspots, and again it is something as countries and as a continent that we worry about, because we're trying to mitigate the negative consequences of the movement of diseases and health-related risks. We established discrete individual departments responsible for individual mandates in the border environment. Let me give a couple of examples. Home Affairs is responsible for immigration. So they've got their own laws, they've got their own capability, their own systems. When we come to SARS, we know SARS was established a little bit later, but SARS is responsible for the movement of goods and customs. They've got their own body of law. They've got their own resources, their own systems. Department of Health. Department of Health similarly is responsible for port health. So they have got their own legislation, their own standard operating procedures, their own capability. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. They are responsible for what we call biosecurity and phytosanitary control. The movement of plants, animals across our borders. Okay? South African Police, SAPS. We have a component within SAPS called border policing. Okay? They are mainly interested in transnational crime and crimes that happen within the border environment. So the picture that I'm pointing is exactly that one of fragmented border management from a government perspective.
We all know that South Africa is surrounded by a number of countries, and obviously a lot of movement is taking place between ourselves and our neighbors for a number of reasons. And it comes from people who come into the country for academic reasons and schooling reasons. So they would come in the beginning of the year and eventually leave at the end of the year. There were people who are here for, working related responsibilities within the mining, within other industries. There are people who are doing business in the country. So there are a number of reasons why people are here. If something happens in a port, the first question is that who's responsible for that? And that is why we still keep the individual departments still responsible, simply because it is still their mandate. So each department will be responsible to respond to specific issues related to their mandate.